My wife chose her family over me after they demanded, "Make her choose us or you." She said, "I choose them." After I refused to give them my savings for a crypto investment, I replied, "Understood." Then I filed for divorce that evening and moved out while she was at their house. My name is Ethan Cole, 35, systems analyst, ordinary guy with ordinary dreams, stable home, maybe a little property someday, maybe a business if life was kind. I never imagined that my marriage would end in the living room of my own apartment, surrounded by people who treated my boundaries like they were optional suggestions. Yet there they were, my wife Lena, her father Robert, her mother Janet, her brother Ryan, and her sister Megan, all sitting on my couch like they had purchased it themselves. They didn't even stand when I walked in after work, they just watched me, eyes sharp with anticipation, like I'd stepped into a staged intervention I never agreed to attend. Lena gave me a nervous smile, the kind where the corners of her mouth twitched like she knew this wasn't going to go well. "Babe," she said softly, "everyone wanted to talk to us about something important, about the crypto investment." Crypto. Of course. Everything in the past year with her family had somehow revolved around that word, crypto, the miracle solution to every problem, the golden ticket her brother believed he had discovered. Ryan had stumbled into a lucky streak early on, and suddenly he was the self-appointed financial oracle of the Carson family. He had been pushing this so-called family investment pool for months. Everyone contributes, he manages the money, and supposedly we all get rich together. The others had already bought in, her parents, her sister. I knew all of that. What irritated me wasn't the pitch, it was the fact that they were sitting in my apartment as if the decision had already been made. I could feel the weight of their expectation pressing into me even before a word was spoken. Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees like a motivational speaker about to deliver wisdom no one asked for. "Dude, I made 22% returns this year. This isn't gambling. It's strategic investment." "Good for you," I replied, keeping my tone level. "Invest your own money then." Janet's eyes immediately welled with tears. She had a talent for crying on command, I'd seen her do it at restaurants when service was slow. "Ethan, sweetheart," she said, voice trembling, "family supports family. This is what families do." I stared at her, feeling my jaw tighten. "I support Lena. We split bills. We manage our home. That is family." Megan crossed her arms with theatrical disgust. "But you're hoarding money that could help all of us." "My savings. My $85,000, scraped together over years of disciplined living before I ever met Lena. It was my safety net, my future foundation." I had never made it a secret, but I also never expected it to become community property for people who saw me as a walking bank account. And the worst part? Lena had told them exactly how much I had. She had shared it casually, like discussing the weather. "Those savings aren't marital property," I reminded them. "They're from before the marriage." Lena and I agreed to keep separate accounts. Robert's face reddened like a warning light. "So you're saying you don't trust your wife?" "I trust her," I answered calmly. "I just don't trust crypto schemes." For over an hour, they hammered me, accusations of selfishness, lectures about family unity, guilt-tripping from every angle they could design. And the whole time Lena sat next to them, silent, watching the emotional ambush unfold like she wasn't part of it. Like she hadn't helped plan it. Then Robert stood up, straightening his posture as if he were delivering a verdict. "I think we need to know where your loyalties lie, Ethan. Are you part of this family or not?" "I'm not giving you my savings," I said again. "Then you're making a choice." He turned to Lena. "Honey, you need to think about what kind of husband refuses to help his family. Maybe you need to choose too." The room froze. My pulse thudded in my ears. Lena looked at me, then at them, then at me again, like her gaze was bouncing between two exits in a burning building. "Can't you just do this for us?" she whispered. "No, why not? It's just money. It's my money. I earned it. I'm not gambling it. She looked back at her family. Her mother's sobs grew louder. Her father's disappointment became a performance. Ryan shook his head, muttering something under his breath about loyalty. Then she looked at me one last time, and her shoulders slumped. Then I choose them. It didn't even sound emotional. Just decisive. Final. I stared at her, unable to respond for a moment. My mind didn't race. My heart didn't break. Everything just went still. Okay, I said quietly. You chose. That's clear. I walked into the bedroom, closed the door gently behind me, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking, they were steady, like I had rehearsed this moment in another lifetime. I searched for divorce attorneys, found one with solid reviews, and sent an email. Wife chose her family when given ultimatum. Need consultation ASAP. The response arrived within an hour. Phone meeting scheduled for that evening. When I stepped back into the living room, they were still there, still talking, still strategizing, still believing they had won something, like I would sulk for a few days and eventually hand them what they wanted. Everyone needs to leave, I said. Ryan scoffed. You don't tell us, my apartment. My name on the lease. Get out. Robert tried the fatherly authoritative tone. You need to calm down and think rationally. I am thinking rationally. You gave Lena an ultimatum. She chose you. Congratulations. Now leave. They left slowly, muttering, glaring, throwing emotional debris behind them. Lena reached for my arm as she passed. Ethan, please, don't do anything stupid. I closed the door without answering. That night, I spoke with the attorney, filed for divorce, and received instructions to protect my assets immediately. By morning, I was already packing. Lena spent those days at her parents' house, texting me increasingly frantic messages, all of which I ignored on my attorney's advice. I moved out before the end of the week, taking only what belonged to me. Every step felt surreal but strangely necessary, like walking out of a building whose foundation had quietly rotted years ago. When Lena returned 3 days later to an empty apartment, she must have realized that I hadn't been bluffing, hadn't been dramatic, hadn't been emotional. I had simply taken her at her word. She chose them. And I understood exactly what that meant. The messages began the moment she stepped into the empty apartment. Dozens of them. Back to back, frantic, almost panicked. Where are you? Why is everything gone? What did you do? Call me right now. Her voice messages were worse, switching between rage, sobbing, and desperate apologies so quickly it made my chest tighten in a way I didn't want to examine. But my attorney had already warned me, no contact except through legal channels. So I blocked her number, and when she used her mother's phone, I blocked that too. After years together, it took 10 minutes to shut down every route she tried to reach me. It felt cold, but also strangely necessary, like cauterizing a wound. I learned later, from mutual friends who refused to mind their own business, that Lena had convinced her family I had stormed out in some dramatic attempt to teach her a lesson. She told them I'd be back within the week, tail between my legs, ready to apologize and hand over the responsible family investment. Ryan had even posted some passive-aggressive nonsense on Facebook about men who choose greed over unity, conveniently avoiding any actual details. But their confidence evaporated the moment the divorce papers were delivered. According to my attorney, their lawyer called within hours, blindsided. They tried to paint the whole situation as a misunderstanding, said Lena just needed time to calm down, that she didn't really choose her family over me, that we should slow everything down and seek counseling. My attorney, always the professional, responded with a single line that I honestly wish I could have delivered myself: my client is simply honoring his wife's stated choice. It didn't take long before things escalated. By the second week, the case had entered discovery, and that's when everything cracked wide open. My attorney gained access to Lena's texts, including her conversations with her family. And the truth hit harder than I expected, even though deep down, I think I already knew. They had planned everything. There were messages from Lena outlining exactly how much I had saved. Messages between her mother and sister discussing how to emotionally corner me. Messages from Ryan strategizing the intervention, timing it for when he knew I'd be exhausted from work. Even jokes about how, once Ethan's money joins the pool, everyone wins. Seeing it spelled out in her own words, that she knew I'd refuse, that she believed cornering me would break down my resistance, felt like a punch. Not because of the ambush itself, but because she had betrayed my trust so casually, like it wasn't even a moral conflict for her. My attorney could barely hide the excitement. "This shows coordinated pressure to access your separate property," she said. "It strengthens your case more than you realize." The first settlement offer from Lena's side came almost immediately after that. It was laughable. They wanted reconciliation, mandatory counseling, and if I refused, they demanded that I compensate Lena for lost marital lifestyle support, that she keep the apartment, and that I cover her legal fees. My attorney let out a short laugh, sharp, disbelieving, then rejected everything. We countered with something brutally simple: no reconciliation. Straight 50-50 split of marital assets only. Premarital savings untouched. She can take over the lease or vacate. Everyone pays their own fees. The next week, everything turned vicious. One afternoon after work, I found Robert, her father, waiting near the parking lot of my building. I don't know how he got past security, but there he was, arms crossed, disappointment on full display, like he was auditioning for a commercial about failed sons-in-law. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't," I replied, keeping distance. He launched into a speech about how I was destroying Lena's life, how I was overreacting over nothing, how a real man knows when to forgive. When I didn't respond, his frustration spiked. At one point he even reached for my arm, and I instinctively pulled back. That seemed to stun him, as if he genuinely believed he still had the right to physically steer my choices. "You're making a huge mistake," he yelled after me as I walked away. "You'll regret this." I didn't answer. I just called my attorney. "Document everything," she said. It became a mantra. Days later, my landlord called to tell me someone had filed a complaint accusing me of subletting my new apartment illegally. He'd already checked, it was false, obviously, but he needed to warn me. That same week, my bank flagged an attempted access on my savings account. Whoever tried had enough of my personal info to almost slip through. I changed every password, added two-step verification, and froze any external access. It wasn't paranoia. They were escalating. Then Ryan posted a self-righteous rant on Facebook accusing me of abandoning my wife, stealing the furniture, and financially abusing her by hiding marital assets. He didn't use my name, but everyone knew. Friends sent screenshots. Some strangers even messaged me, demanding I explain myself. I stayed silent. But my brother didn't. He commented publicly, "Funny story. Shame you left out the part where your whole family demanded $85,000 for a crypto scheme, ambushed Ethan, forced your sister to choose between them and her husband, and she chose you. That's why he left. That's why he filed. Tell the full truth." The post blew up instantly. Ryan deleted it within hours, but not before people started asking questions, real questions his family couldn't spin away. Within days, the harassment complaints, the bank breach attempt, and the work parking lot confrontation were all filed in court. My attorney pushed for a restraining order against the entire Carson family. The judge reviewed the evidence and granted it, temporary, but strict. Then came Lena's next move. Her attorney filed a motion claiming I had coerced her into saying, "I choose them." According to her new version, she had been emotionally manipulated, and the choice wasn't genuine. It was desperation, panic, pressure. My attorney didn't even pretend to take it seriously. "Do you have anything showing this was premeditated on their side?" she asked. I presented everything: the group chat, the strategy texts, the conversations where Lena discussed convincing me, even early messages where I had told my brother months before that her family was pushing crypto stuff and I wasn't interested. We subpoenaed Ryan's phone, and the group chat messages confirmed every detail. They planned it. They coordinated the pressure. They chose the ultimatum. Lena supported it. Her coercion claim collapsed instantly. But the recorded attempt to retract it only embarrassed her side further. It stayed in the court record, permanently, like a scar that wouldn't fade. Then something happened that not even I saw coming. The crypto platform Ryan worshipped, the one they had all put their money into, collapsed. A full-on implosion. Investigations revealed it was essentially a Ponzi scheme. Withdrawals froze, trading halted, accounts locked. Her family lost nearly everything they had contributed. Lena's parents lost their retirement security. Her mother lost her inheritance. Ryan lost $20,000 and his girlfriend walked out after discovering he had used joint funds. Even Megan, who contributed the least, was devastated. And yet, somehow, they blamed me. Robert violated the restraining order by calling my phone, screaming that if I had invested, they could have cashed out early. I reported him immediately, and he received another court warning. Mutual friends whispered updates, even though I asked them to stop. Her family is falling apart. They're blaming each other. They're blaming Lena. She keeps asking if you'll give her one chance to talk. I ignored all of it. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew nothing I said would fix decades of their entitlement. The divorce hearings continued. Lena's attorney tried to argue that she deserved spousal support. The judge rejected it. She had worked part-time by choice, we had always split bills proportionally, and nothing about our lifestyle warranted alimony. They tried arguing she deserved more of the marital assets because she sacrificed her career. My attorney presented her employment history. She had worked part-time long before meeting me. They tried emotional damages. The judge told them to stop wasting the court's time. In the end, the settlement was simple: split the small joint savings, about $12,000 total. We each got $6,000. I kept every cent of my premarital savings. No spousal support. Apartment secured under my name. Each of us paid our own attorney fees. It cost me around $8,000 for legal representation. Add the $6,000 half of joint savings I lost, and it was a hefty hit. But compared to losing $85,000, and being tied for life to people who saw me as a wallet with legs, it was the best money I had ever spent. 6 months passed. Quietly after everything finalized. No more filings, no more motions. The restraining order eventually expired, and I finally allowed myself to breathe without expecting someone from the Carson family to appear in my shadow. And then Lena sent a handwritten letter. 5 pages. Carefully folded. No return address. She wrote about regret, about pressure, about fear. She said she realized I had been right about everything. She said she wished she had chosen differently. She said she never stopped loving me. She left her phone number and begged me to call. I read it once. Slowly. Then tore it into pieces, not out of anger, but closure. She had chosen her path months ago. I had simply followed mine. When I think back on everything, the ambush, the divorce, the fallout, I realize something strange: the silence afterward was louder than the conflict itself. Not the angry kind of silence, not the sorrowful kind either. It was the silence of a life finally free from constant tension, free from trying to measure up to expectations that were never mine to begin with. And in that silence, I began to rebuild. The apartment, once cluttered with memories I didn't want anymore, slowly turned into a place that felt like mine. The building manager, after everything he witnessed, surprised me by reducing my rent for a few months. "Consider it restitution," he said. I took it. Not because I needed the discount, but because it was the first gesture in months that felt genuinely kind. I adopted a dog, a rescue named Milo, some mix of shepherd and collie with mismatched ears and a habit of sleeping at my feet like he'd known me forever. I didn't adopt him to fill a void. I adopted him because I wanted something in my life that didn't demand, didn't guilt, didn't manipulate. Milo only wanted walks, food, and a warm spot on the couch. It was uncomplicated, and maybe that's why it helped me breathe for the first time in a long while. Work improved too. My boss started handing me larger projects, and a few months later, I earned a promotion, higher pay, better hours, more autonomy. People congratulated me like it was some kind of phoenix from the ashes story, but the truth was simpler. Without the emotional drain of the Carson family, I finally had the energy to focus on something that mattered. I kept hearing updates from mutual friends, even when I asked them not to. I think people love tragedy when it's not theirs. They'd say, "Ethan, did you hear what happened to Ryan? Did you know Janet and Robert are fighting again? Lena moved back home, apparently it's tense." I never asked for details, but somehow the details always found me. Ryan had been questioned by financial regulators, though he wasn't charged. He lost his job after his employer discovered he'd been pitching the crypto scheme at work. His girlfriend left him when she found out he had invested using their joint account. He moved back in with his parents and blamed everyone but himself. Megan stopped talking to him entirely. Apparently, she said something like, "You ruined this family," during one dinner. She wasn't wrong. The Carson household became a battlefield, each member assigning blame like shrapnel. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel triumphant. Mostly, I felt removed. Like I was watching a house crumble that I had once visited but never truly lived in. The heaviest updates were always about Lena. According to one friend, she now worked full-time at a local insurance office. She had never worked more than part-time before, but losing her savings, moving back home, and dealing with her family's fallout forced her into a reality she had never prepared for. "She looks exhausted," my friend said once, voice low. Like she's carrying everyone's disappointment. I didn't respond. Because what could I say? I wasn't her solution anymore. Then one day, a voicemail slipped past my work phone's screening. The number was familiar, though I hadn't seen it in months. "Robert." I didn't answer, but I listened later, partly out of morbid curiosity. His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "I was wrong about you," he said. "About the investment. About everything. Lena made a mistake choosing us. If you'd consider reconciling, we'd support it." I didn't even listen to the rest. I deleted it halfway through. Not angrily, just detached. The audacity wasn't surprising anymore. Entitlement rarely disappears, it just changes shape when desperation sets in. A month later, I received the handwritten letter from Lena. 5 pages, written in a careful hand I once knew by heart. But the words were no longer familiar. They were heavy with regret, remorse, and things she should have said before everything collapsed. She admitted her family pressured her. She admitted she didn't think I'd leave. She admitted she thought I'd come to my senses. She admitted she believed the investment was a test of loyalty, not a boundary. Reading it, I felt the faint ghost of something, old affection, maybe, but mostly I felt distance. A long, stretching distance like an ocean where a bridge had once been. I shredded the letter not because I hated her, but because I didn't want to keep it. I didn't want to reopen a chapter that had already ended in bold, permanent ink. The truth was simple, she said, "I choose them." I said, "Understood." There was no fixing that. The weeks moved on quietly. I focused on saving money, building a routine with Milo, reconnecting with my brother, spending time with coworkers who didn't know anything about the Carson meltdown. I attended a few weekend markets, explored new hiking trails, rediscovered hobbies I had put aside when life became too chaotic. Eventually, I started dating again, slowly, casually, without the urgency I once felt. I met women who respected boundaries, who asked questions instead of assuming answers, who didn't come with a family committee hiding behind them. I wasn't looking for love, but I was open to possibility. That alone felt like growth. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if I'd changed. If bitterness had seeped into me without my noticing. But I realized something important: I didn't feel angry anymore. Not at Lena, not at her family, not even at the chaos they dragged into my life. I felt grateful. Grateful that I had walked away before I lost everything. Grateful that my instincts had been stronger than my desire to keep the peace. Grateful that I had finally learned what love should never require: financial submission, emotional surrender, blind loyalty. People asked me occasionally, "Do you ever regret not trying harder?" No. The answer was always no. There's a difference between giving up on someone and stepping away from people who would gladly destroy you to protect their comfort. And Lena, whether she meant to or not, showed me exactly where she stood the moment she spoke those 3 words. Life handled the consequences on its own. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even want vindication. All I wanted was peace, and I had it now. Months turned into seasons. The pain faded, replaced by something sturdier, self-respect, maybe. The future didn't look uncertain anymore. It looked open. Like a door that had always been there, waiting for me to stop trying to fix the wrong house. Sometimes, when Milo curls up beside me on the couch and the evening sun settles over the apartment, I find myself smiling at nothing. Not out of joy, not out of triumph, but out of relief. The Carson family chose greed. Lena chose them. And I chose myself. In the end, that choice made all the difference. The chapter is closed. The book is shelved. I've already started writing something new. And for the first time in a long time, the story feels like it truly belongs to me.